There's a lot of great people that covered the Red Sox throughout this past season, and one of them was Joey Copponi, who formerly co-hosted the podcast called Inside the Monster, and we spoke with him in this episode of the Locked On Red Sox podcast.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Massachusetts Pirates team insider Jake Ignaszewski, and we were joined today by the former co-host of the Red Sox podcast called Inside the Monster with Joey Copponi and Steve Perrault. But we're joined by Joey today to talk a little bit about his first year of experience covering the Red Sox for the official Red Sox podcast, and also sort of his journey and what he learned and enjoyed most about that time with Inside the Monster. So let's get into our conversation with Joey Copponi. We are here with the former co-host of Inside the Monster, Joey Copponi. So how are we doing, Joey?
I'm doing all right, man. Like you said, former, and that's new news. So things could be better, to be totally honest, but things are going all right, man. Pretty quiet in Red Sox land right now, but lots of playoff baseball to keep me busy.
But overall, like, how was the experience during, your first year of, fully covering a Red Sox team, especially being, the official Red Sox podcast?
It was crazy. It was crazy. And it was really fast. I wasn't necessarily expecting the call to get the gig. I had hopes, but you can't put yourself in a position to be too let down. So I wasn't really expecting it. And it wasn't till I was in Fort Myers and me and Steve Perrault, my former co-host, were heading to JetBlue Park that it hit me. Up until that point, it had just been like, it kind of felt like a fever dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden we're like on the way there. We have our credentials around our neck. And I'm like, I am going to be interacting with the Sox. I don't know if I can do this. And had a little
I bet
bit
once
of
they hand you the credential, you're like, I'm official now. Holy crap.
Yeah, like this is a picture of me that says like full access. It's like, man, I don't know if I can do this. But, luckily Steve and the team, the league, the players, personnel, everybody was just so nice and inviting. There's really no rookie hazing in the media world. Just kind of got welcomed in, and it was great, man. And as the year went on, it just kind of feels like what you do. It's hard to kind of take a step back, especially when you're in your first year. You can't really appreciate your successes when there's still so many rungs of the ladder to climb. So there were a few instances where I got to kind of take a step back and be like, holy cow, this is crazy. But the moments where I did, I'm glad I did, because I can look back and appreciate those things now,
I found it interesting, hearing the last episode of Inside the Monster. You speaking about how you really got the call and how it wasn't the normal way that you usually get told that you're going to be a part of the podcast, and and it was cool as well for you to sort of reflect on your journey up to that point. And I feel like not a lot of people really know your full journey. And if you want to speak a little bit about that, you started with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats and Manchester, New Hampshire, and then you went up to the big time.
Yeah, so I went to film school. I won't go into my whole college experience, give my whole life story, but I went to film school and got out and wanted to get into the film industry. And one of the gigs that I took in just trying to put food on the table in the meantime was with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. Was obviously a baseball fan my whole life, and they were right there, and it was just a perfect fit. It was no money, it was nothing, but it was just something, and it was a resume builder. I'll tell you, I made $30 a game, not per hour, not whatever, a game. So it really came out to like $5 an hour. It was less than minimum wage. I don't know how they get away with that, but whatever. So after that, I needed some stability, and I needed something that wasn't just like gig to gig. I couldn't just like keep taking like a production assistant on a Kevin Hart special once every 9 months. It was like, okay, I gotta like really get a job here, because I was having a baby. So I was like, okay, that's probably a good reason to get a steady job. And in my search, I found this baseball company, or a baseball novelty product company called Lumberland, who was looking to start a social media team. and they just wanted content creators. And I was like, that sounds too good to be true. I'll apply for that. And I got it. And they were like, yeah, just build a social team. And for 2 years I was there. It went from just me to a team of 10 of us. And we built a following of a little over 2 million on TikTok, like 200,000 on Instagram, a couple 100,000 on YouTube. It took off. And in being there, we attracted some attention from some media people, and one of them was Steve Perrault, who reached out and said, like, hey, we should collaborate. And I think he was just trying to grow his TikTok audience, to be honest with you, which, like, fine. Like, I understand that.
Yeah.
But and a lot of those people you turn away in a situation. You just say, like, hey, yeah, we're doing our thing. Like, we're not trying to just collaborate with anybody. But I spoke up because I knew this guy, because I had listened to his podcast, Section 10. And I was like, no, we should do something with this guy. And they were like, you can do it if you feel strongly about it. So we did a video together ranking custom cleats from the 21 season. And shortly after that, reached out to Steve and I was like, hey, see, you're looking for a co-host. I'm going to submit a video. And I did. And then like 2 days later, I called him and I was like, can I submit a new video? Because I was drunk in my garage when I made that, and I just watched it back, and that's not going to do me any favors. And he watched it and called me back and was laughing, was like, yeah, you should do another one. and I did. And then while I was waiting to get the call, I lost the job. It was a small startup that was kind of making cuts around the media team, and made sense to kind of part ways. But then, I didn't know what the next step was. I texted Steve one day. I was just alone in my house, just feeling sorry for myself, middle of the winter. And I hit him up and was like, hey, man, did you ever find your co-host? And he's like, yeah, I'll call you in a minute. And he called me and was like, yeah, so we're pretty sure just got to lock down the paperwork and get that over to you. It should be a couple weeks, but yeah. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry. It's me? And it took a long time for that to really sink in. Like I said, probably not till I was like in Fort Myers. But yeah, so if anybody, I think there are some people who are aware of Lumberland, especially like TikTok active people.
Yep. I know of
takes them a little
Lumberland
bit.
because like I saw their videos of them going around the office and bringing up like a picture of a player and then having them like guess who it was, and it was Mackley or Ordonez, or was somebody in the early 2000s, and those videos are really funny.
Yeah, so it takes people a little while, I think, to like put together. I got some DMs like over the course of the year that were like, wait, you're Joey from Lumberland. That's why you looked familiar. It's like, yeah, we didn't, I wasn't all too involved in the videos unless you were like on the YouTube. But I was like kind of producing and managing that stuff from behind the scenes a lot. But yeah, there was a couple of funny interactions at Fenway this year. Like Yankee fans were like, I know you, bro. How do I know you? It's like, I'm going to let them figure it out on their own. But yeah, awesome, so that's where I come from. I came from Lumberland, and then Steve brought me over to Odyssey, and now to wherever the next landing spot is.
And reflecting on that, that must be like pretty crazy to contextualize in your mind, the year or how everything all came together, and really reflecting on it. Like, is there any advice that you would give to that Joey, who was unemployed and didn't really know what the next step was? Because that's something that I feel like whether you're in the sports industry or you're just in a regular career, I feel like there's definitely people out there who are feeling that way, and would love to learn about what you think.
I'll tell you, I mean, it's weird because I'm kind of in that spot again, so I'm kind of like giving myself the advice, so it's a little hard to drum that up. But I will say I'm just kind of hopelessly optimistic. I always have been. So in receiving some of the support and the nice messages that I've been getting over the past couple days of people saying like, hey, man, I have faith that it'll work out, I always reply and say like, yeah, dude, I do too. I really do. I just feel like it'll work out. And I don't know how much science there is to that, I don't know how much I believe in like, hey, just put out good vibes and the good vibes will come back your way. But that seemed to have worked for me up to this point.
Yep.
I would say don't be afraid to use any resources that you have. And that when people say, hey, any way I can help, let me know, that they mean it. Like they wouldn't say it if they didn't mean it. Because there are also people who will reach out and just say, hey, I'm sorry, let me know what happens. And so you've got to take the people who are offering support as being earnest and use those people, reach out to them. I wish I had texted Steve sooner, and the only reason that I found out when I did and got the relief that I did is because I reached out and just be active, man. I don't know. It's not an easy industry to break into, sports in general. And you got to be persistent, got to be loud, got to stay relevant. And there's a lot of pieces to it, man.
That's one thing that, I've tried to preach on this podcast is curiosity. Just reaching out with a cold email. I've said this multiple times. I wouldn't have the jobs that I have today if I didn't send out a cold email. And also, you never know who's watching. You know what I mean? And you just taking that collaboration with Steve could have been the defining moment where he wouldn't have known who you were when he was starting his Red Sox podcast, you know what I mean? So you never know how those stars really align. But especially with this being, your first season as essentially a media member within the Red Sox sort of realm, did you expect the fans to be as erratic or, reactionary, especially during a season like this?
To us or to the team?
To the team, and also, I guess, like you guys too.
I mean, I guess after 2021, I think we were all expecting something better than what happened.
1,000%.
Yeah. I don't know if I was expecting an ALCS run again, but like you take that team and you add Trevor Story to it, and it's like, okay, like this looks like things could align and that like maybe we could be looking at a wild card team again. I think that was always the expectation. I think it was always like fighting for the division, but like realistically, it's a tough division, probably a wild card team. I don't think anybody came into this year saying it was going to be a last place team. So I understand the team reaction. I totally do. But there's kind of just been 2 fan reactions all year, which is sign Bogey, sign Devers. Yeah. That's it. This year is kind of defined by that. Like no matter what happened out there, if they did make it to the wild card, won 1 game and got bounced, it wouldn't make a difference. If they won 12 more games, it wouldn't have made a difference. People still would be saying sign Bogey, sign Devers. And I think that's a good thing, man. Even when Bogey was struggling, his power numbers weren't what they were. And to be totally fair, Devers' power numbers weren't the same as people expected either. That kind of got brushed under the rug too. It just shows how much people care about the team and about the players. So even though there's going to be people who dip out when things aren't going great, I think the Sox have a really loyal fan base, even in their critiques of the team. It's still coming from a place of loyalty. Like, now we want these guys. We want to be great. It's all that. It's never strictly malicious, just like blow up the team, get them out of here. We need new owners. Like that's a really, really small slice of the pie.
I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Joey Copponi, but I just want to take a second to talk to you about BetOnline.net, which is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every single game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and even golf as well. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now let's get back into my conversation with Joey. Well, I was curious your thoughts, just because like last year was my first year on Red Sox Twitter and really interacting, and this year was my first year, doing a podcast talking about the team 5 days a week, and so it wasn't surprising to me, with how fans reacted, but I was curious, your thought process during your first like full year, but I bet it was also weird for you too, going to Fenway, last year, just going as a fan, and now people are actually recognizing you.
That was weird. That was for sure weird. So the 2021 postseason, Lumberland made a couple of trips over there, and that was kind of my first experience of people like stopping you for a picture and saying what's up. And that was real shocking because we didn't expect that. It was a little easier being by Steve's side, and knowing like, okay, this is probably going to happen and whatever. And early in the year, there was a handful of instances where I was taking pictures for people of them and Steve, which like to be expected. But luckily that kind of subsided as the year went on. But yeah, I mean, the wild card game, dude, I bought tickets the day of and they were crazy expensive. It's like I barely got in. I was in the back row of section 10, which is actually just a happy, funny circumstance. Yeah. Like didn't search them out. It was just like what was available. And we were like, squeezed into those tiny wooden seats that I don't think we sat in for a second. And, you have the overhang covers half your view and I couldn't see any of the bogey home run, like trying to dip down to my knees to try to get a glimpse of it. And, slugging beers in the grandstands. And then, my very next game that I go to, I'm wearing a credential standing on the field at Yankee Stadium. And I'm like, okay, this is I got like some real shakes there. I was like, I understand this is the new Yankee Stadium. This is like 1 year of Derek Jeter Yankee Stadium. Like haven't really done anything here, Yankee Stadium. But still, I was like, man, this is a cathedral of baseball. And then immediately after that to go back to Boston and go in the media entrance of Fenway Park. It's a change, bro. It's a change. And one that I don't want to say I took for granted, but it just kind of does start to feel like work. You're like, all right, like this is just my thing. You can't act too big there. You can't really let yourself feel in that moment because you're just trying to blend in because everybody else is calm, cool, and collect. You can't be like taking selfies in the press box. Look where I am. Like, Instagram story. I can't believe I'm really here. Like you got to just act cool. Yeah. And yeah, like looking back, there's certainly like moments where I'm like, I wish I really soaked that in. I wish I did act like the little kid I felt like,
Well, so like I can kind of connect with that because I was a media member for the Woo Sox for the first time ever, and walking into that clubhouse and having Tristan Cassis and Jaron Duran like right there, like that was the biggest thing that I could say is taking that fan hat off and putting the reporter hat on, and especially when you went to spring training, was able to interview, Garrett Whitlock, Christian Arroyo, and you were sitting at that desk with the lights and the cameras on you. You mentioned that it's really sunk in once you were on the plane, but like how incredible was it, you looking around like right before they were like, all right, get ready, we're starting. And you're like, oh boy, I gotta, get the reporter hat on.
Yeah. I mean, so my first time in the clubhouse was at spring training and walking in there was like, kid in a candy store, dude. It's hard to not just like look around with these wide eyes like, whoa, that's really Xander Bogaerts. Oh man, you can't be asking for autographs and pictures. So it's a hard transition to make, and I think there's also a risk of steering too far into it because you see some of the older reporters who get really jaded to it and are like, yeah, I'm just here because it's whatever, and they look like they're miserable and they ask miserable questions, and it's like. You can take it as a learning experience. Like, okay, I don't want to be that guy, but I also know I can't be this like overly excited version of myself that I also want to be. But yeah, Arroyo was the first player that we talked to, and I couldn't have drawn it up better. That's the guy you want to talk to. Yo-Yo is like as easygoing, as normal of a guy as it gets. And as we were like setting up the interview, like my camera stopped working and like the Zoom recorder wasn't working. And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he was like joking around with me and like was totally patient and whatever. And like after the interview ended, he stuck around. We were talking about sneakers and stuff. And a guy like him is like a huge asset to any team, but like also just an asset to like myself, just to like walk in there and be like, okay, I've made a buddy here, and then to go to Fenway and see him, and it feels like he was just like a perfect entryway into getting to know the team, and also just like a not imposing individual. Right. He doesn't feel like a big leaguer. There are some guys you meet that you're like, you're a big leaguer. Another one of those guys, oddly enough, is Aaron Judge. That is just a kind, nice dude. I know Steve like shines his shoes on our show a lot, but he really is just a nice dude. It's like you'd never guess he's a superstar, but he sure is, dude. There's a lot of guys like that
you
on the
guys got
Sox
to
too.
go on like the media row too for like the All-Star game, so you guys were able to see some of the best players in the league.
Yeah, there is a moment during All-Star Weekend which I don't think many people know about. You've probably seen clips from it, but you don't know exactly like what is going on there, and I think everybody should know about it. There is it's the day before the Derby. All of the AL All-Stars come out for half an hour, and they each sit at a little table with their name behind them, and they just sit there. And the media comes out and gets to go and talk to them. And most people are asking lighthearted things and just making TikToks and Instagram reels and just making fun little content with them. And they all get into it. They get, they open up a little bit more than they would, say standing at their locker being asked how they felt going 0 for 4 tonight. Like they open up, man, and it's always good stuff. So like, so they come out for half an hour, then they go back, and then the NL All-Stars all come out for half an hour. So you get a chance to really get around. Like they don't cram it all into one time. And there are so many guys around the league that like you just have a normal conversation with for a minute, and you're like, oh, you're a guy. You're just a normal dude. Like it's not. I don't know about you, but like in like high school or college, like the athletes, the jocks, you're like, oh, those guys are kind of untouchable. Those are like the dudes, And I just never felt that way with most major leaguers. Like in those moments, there's guys like, Pujols is there, and Freddie Freeman is there, and Aaron Judge is there, and like they're going to be swarmed. You're not gonna. There's no point in standing around. Freddie, actually, I did talk to, but like that's because he talks to everybody. He's just the nicest person who's ever existed. But you go to like some of the less media crazed all-stars like Travis d'Arnaud, Cronenworth, Jock Peterson, like to go to those guys and have a chit chat really opens you up to seeing the humanity of these guys, and also opens your eyes to like, man, like there are media members who write like some mean hit pieces and then go and look in this dude's face. And this dude has to keep his composure and just act like he's normal about it. And if he freaks out 1%, it's headline news. Like, oh, the shortstop for this team said this to a media guy. Can you believe it? He should be fined. It's crazy. It definitely gives you a different perspective. And I think being in the media, you'd expect it to be that like, I see the media's side now. No, I totally don't. I really saw it from the other side that like, man, these players have like a really extensive job description that includes a lot of weird things like, hey, you're just going to be insulted sometimes. You just got to deal with it.
And sometimes, especially like you mentioned those moments where you literally the next day have to look in that guy's face and act like you didn't just write all this malarkey about him. And I bet it must have been interesting for you too, like having that preconceived notion about what a guy might act like, and then sort of like you mentioned with Aaron Judge, he just acts like a super nice guy, which he is. And was there anybody like outside of Judge that you were just really surprised with how down to earth they were, or how lighthearted they were?
Not lighthearted, but down to earth. Tommy Pham. It's certainly not lighthearted. Absolutely not how I would describe Tommy Pham. So I was sitting in the dugout. This wasn't too long ago, maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, and Tommy Pham keeps coming. He goes out to the cage, then he comes back to the dugout. He keeps going back and forth like every couple minutes, and he's switching out his contact lenses. And I said something to him like, oh, like really trying to find your prescription, huh? And he just like turned to me and went off on this like, yeah, I just can't. I don't know what's going on, and just kind of opened up about like, yeah, my contacts. I have an issue with my contacts right now. I've been changing my prescription for the last month. Not a lighthearted guy, but a guy who is like a human being and like will open up and whatever. He's an intimidating presence in a good way. He's the kind of guy you want on your team. But like a lighthearted guy, man, a guy that's easy to like joke around with. Kike obviously is like, he's known for being that, and he is that. On the Sox, Bogey is like all business. I mean, this year he's been all business because, I mean, of course. And like, I can't imagine what it feels like to be in Bogey's shoes right now, just being constantly harassed about something that he has no control over. Like that's, right. I'm sure not a lot of fun. Devers is always smiling, dude. Like everything everyone says about him is so true. He's just a happy guy who's stoked to be playing baseball. Just
It was
walks
cool to
around with
hear
this
you
big old
guys
smile.
like kind of make Whitlock open up a little, because I've like
Mhm,
never really, I guess, heard him talk or like
mhm,
talk outside of baseball, and so it was cool to see this guy that you see on the mound that just seems all business, and then
mhm.
to see him joke around and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's another guy who like at first he was like very all business. Then he
Hmm.
I think with coming on our show, there's been a couple of guys who after we record have said like, "Oh, like why didn't you let me know it's this kind of show?" Like it's like I realized like, okay, you got to let guys know ahead of time like you don't have to prepare for this. We're not going to ask you like,
Right.
"Hey, have you found what's wrong with your swing yet?" Like
Hmm.
that's not what we're going to do. We're going to be like, "Hey, do you like fishing? Like what do you do in the off season?" And I think Garrett realized that mid-interview. He was like,
That's
"Oh,
funny.
these guys just want to chit chat and whatever." And like we talked a little bit about the Yankees and letting them go and if any of the rivalry there that he feels that he says he doesn't, but I just don't believe him. But he's a fun guy. He's a really nice guy. He's a guy I wouldn't personally like approach at the park because it's like
Hmm.
he's just doing his thing. I feel like pitchers in general, that's like a good rule.
Right.
Like just leave him be unless it's like a starter who's on day one of rest or something.
Hmm.
Like beyond that, like pitchers are in their zone, man, and like catchers a similar thing. Like they're
Yeah,
just kind of
exactly.
their own guy. Let them float around. Let them do their thing. But Whitlock's for sure a great guy.
And then I think fans would really find it interesting too, with all the different stuff that you did throughout the season. But I think they mainly see, obviously, you guys post the podcast and they think you just go on talking to the microphone and that's all you do all week. But outside of recording the podcast and producing it and that sort of stuff, like what other stuff did you do like for Odyssey throughout the season?
So I personally worked with a bunch of other shows. I don't know if I can say which ones, to be honest.
You don't have to
I
say.
think that's
Yeah,
one of the things
I don't want to
I'm
get you in
not
trouble.
supposed to. I don't know. But I worked with a bunch of shows. I did like social media management. I did video editing, made promotions, like social media best practices stuff, which I'm sure people are all super into. They're like, "Wow, what is the best time to post on Instagram, Joey?" But it's a bunch of that stuff. So I've like I said, I went to film school, so helping people set up setups like this, like remote podcasting and
Hmm.
recording and then cutting promos and stuff like that, social media engagement, all that stuff. Steve's title was actually like the senior director of Major League Baseball content at 2400 Sports. So he worked with a whole bunch of shows and was like trying to get a whole bunch of teams involved, and he was a lot more busy than I was. But I think another thing people don't realize is that you don't just like flip it on and go, which is like
Hmm.
totally my style. Every show that I've ever been a part of, I just show up and turn on a mic. I'm like, I'll find something to say. Sometimes I just start a sentence and find out where it's going.
Right.
But quickly realized with Inside the Monster, I can't do that. Like this is going to have to be a show where I have things ready to go. Be it notes on a game, but also just like notes from talking to guys and um, preparing for the next thing. And you never want to sound unprepared,
Hmm.
uh, even in a joking manner. I think that still gets lost sometimes. If you jokingly try to be like, "Oh man, I didn't see that. Did that really happen?" You're still gonna get tweets the next day. It's like, "How did you not see Bogey's RBI double?" It's like, "I obviously did, bro. I obviously did." But no, I'm just joking. Like the fans were like all great except for like two guys this whole year. But beyond that, everybody was unbelievable. So um yeah, there's things behind the scenes that people definitely don't know go into it, but I also kind of hate talking about that because it feels like I'm saying like, "Oh man, my job's so hard. I put in so much this, so much that." And it's like there are coal miners that listen to this. There are like truck drivers who listen to this. There's
Right.
like, whatever. And Chris Cotillo was nice enough to put out a tweet the other day about our show ending and said like, "Oh, these guys worked their ass off." And when I saw that, I was like, "That's very kind." I don't know. I don't know if there's any amount of work you can put into sports media that is working your ass off. I don't know if that's even possible. So it's a ton of fun. There is a ton of things that go into it, but it's also like there's nothing else I'd rather be doing, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're so lucky to just be able to talk into this microphone about our favorite team, and that's something that I feel like I try not to take advantage of, and I had a lot of moments this season where I like took a step back, kind of like you mentioned, it was like holy crap, like this is pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
But for Cotillo, like, did he ever show you like the art of making the perfect ice cream within the press box, or?
Yes. Yes, it happened. I watched him. So every time I went in the cafeteria, I looked for him. And there was one day I was actually lucky enough. I saw him start to fill up and I got a video of it. I was like, wow, the master at work. Here's the secret. Puts the hot fudge and the Oreos on the bottom,
Ooh.
then the ice cream, and then some more on top. And then he does sprinkles. I don't do sprinkles, but I did learn I had to stop the everyday ice cream because that's like one of the things that's like unlimited there. Like, you can go and get a meal and whatever, but there's like 3 or 4 things that are unlimited. It's donuts, coffee, water, ice cream. And I for sure was taking advantage of the ice cream. It's a bad habit, bro. To have daily ice cream.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna get sick of it to a point. But I think Chris never gets sick of it.
I
He's
don't know how,
such a
man.
nice guy. I actually had a friend that like literally asked me. He's like, "Wait, isn't that the guy from the Mexican Times?" I'm like, "Yep, that's Chris Cotillo."
That's him, dude.
And
Muchas
I think it's
gracias,
also so
Castillo.
funny too, like Steve and also Jared and Cotillo's like interactions too, because some people are like, "Wait, do they actually hate each other?"
They have such a strange relationship because like I think that sometimes too. I'll watch them talk in person. I'm like, are you guys joking? I'm not totally sure. But no, I mean, Cotillo is such a nice guy. I actually did his podcast like 2 hours ago. He had me and Steve on, and a super nice guy. I mean, he reached out, was basically like, hey, like let's talk about it, about like how you're not with Odyssey anymore, and then we can go and Sox talk from there. But like I think he was trying to help us out, and he's like a really great guy. He's also incredibly young. People forget
Yeah.
that he's like 25 years old, and he's been doing this for 10 years. I don't know how that math even works out, but
When I first had him on, like I used his picture from like when he was 18 and he was on like MLB Network, and he's like,
yeah.
that was 100 pounds, like, oh, that was like,
hundred
he's like,
pounds
I look,
ago.
yeah, 100 pounds ago. He's like, I look so young in that. But it's especially for you, getting ready for this Red Sox offseason.
Mhm.
One thing that I'm curious about is if there was one person that you think the Red Sox should go out and get who would really, fill a need for them this offseason. If there's anybody that comes to mind, who's that one person? I don't want any easy answers because I've had
I
people be
know
like
it.
Xander Bogaerts, Rafi. I'm like, all right, stop.
Yeah. So I think it would take more than Xander Bogaerts, Rafael, and even one external piece to really satisfy the fan base, to like create a solid team.
Right.
So it's tough to just find one. I mean, like Shohei Ohtani, like that would be cool. Like, but I mean, even realistically, even if you grab Judge, you're going to get a lot of fair weather fans who like, maybe we're out on the Sox that maybe come in to the Sox nation and start to follow the team. I don't think that puts you over the top and makes you a contender. But I don't even think your lineup is your number one priority. It's your entire pitching staff. Like realistically, you need 2 starters and probably 2 relievers, if not a couple more. The thing with the bullpen is that the free agent class for relievers right now is thin and it's old. They're all mid 30s and not great numbers. There's like really 2 young guys, one a lot more appealing than the other. It's Miguel Castro and Edwin Diaz.
Right.
I don't see Diaz going anywhere because he's on the Mets. He's also just like more important than a player. It's kind of like become a branding thing that like I'm sure they want to lock him up.
Yeah, he's probably gonna get like 100 mil.
Yeah, he's gonna get some money, dude. He's a cash grab. Like he's pulling in a lot of money, and it's not just for his performance on the field. And then Castro pitched like 30 innings this year and has a 4.0 ERA, and he's like the only other reliever that's a free agent in his 20s. So it's going to be thin. So realistically, if you want to deepen your bullpen, you're probably going to have to trade. And I don't know how willing Heim is to do that. I know he loves fortifying the farm system. I don't know if he wants to go and drain it. You do have a lot of guys who got a lot of attention in this past year in your minor system. Ceddanne Rafaela, a whole bunch of guys. But are you willing to move pieces like York and Meyer and all that, like your top prospects? Because if everybody's trying to fortify a bullpen, which like they kind of are, because like this postseason is proving how important that is.
Yep.
Then I don't know how likely it is to go out and get a really strong bullpen. I don't know. I think it would take maybe a change in mentality in the front office, because you're going to have to spend a lot and trade a lot. And they've proven that they don't really want to spend a lot. And trading has been usually in acquisition of prospects. Now you're talking about kind of flipping your trade mentality as well.
Right.
So that's a long way of saying I want Aaron Judge and Edwin Diaz.
Well, that's something that, I was intrigued by with the press conference is Heim sort of mentioning that he's open to trading prospects. And, that really, I think what he needs to look at is who's a part of the future and who's not, and really start to figure out, is Nick York going to be in the future infield of the Red Sox in the next 3 to 4 yeyears? If not, trade him. Or just try to wait until he builds up his value back up, because, obviously it decreased due to a down year this year. But I think, Coop from the Bradford Show brought up Shane Bieber, and I hadn't thought about him. But, you really got to get a solidified starter as well. And I don't think Carlos Rodon is going to be that guy. The injury problems, I think he's obviously also going to demand, 25 to 30. But, I think you really got to solidify that pitching staff.
Yeah, Rodon's kind of like the name being tossed around, and anytime that conversation happens, I don't like anytime a guy's at the front of free agent talks, trade talks, whatever. I don't feel all too confident in the Red Sox chances.
Right.
Exactly. They've just kind of proven over the last couple of years that they're not a top bidder, and that sucks because they could be.
Right.
But they've just proven they're not the place to go and make the most money right now.
That's the one thing that, like, I get his mindset. I get Heim's mindset with it, but something that I'll never forget Coley Mick saying back on Section 10 was, this is the effing Red Sox, so act like it. And that's one thing that, I'm waiting for Heim to do and get out of his comfort zone. But super excited for you, Joey, to see what the future holds. Super excited for what happens with the podcast. I definitely see somebody picking it up, and can't wait to continue to see you talking about Sox and continuing to kill it, and as well as Alex Cora and Heim Bloom being a part of the new podcast as well.
Yeah, that's a little secret. Yeah, they're gonna be the third and fourth mics. You'd think they might be 1 and 2, but they're not. They're not really cut out for it yet, but they're still getting into it. But luckily, they have a veteran like me to kind of show them the ropes a little bit of how we do things around here. But thank you for that, man. I'm really hoping so. We got some potential landing spots lined up. We got some people we're talking to, so we're hoping it's not going to be a super long wait. It is going into the offseason, so I mean that kind of plays into all this stuff. So hopefully we won't have too long of a gap here, and we'll be posting stuff on social media to kind of stay in there and keep talking about the Sox as much as we can in the meantime. But thank you so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll continue to support you guys. And, if anybody wants to, support yourself or just the podcast in any way that they can, how can they do that?
So my personal socials are at Joey Copponi, Copponi. No A's in there. There's no A's. No matter how many times you want to put an A, there's no A. Opponi. And the Inside the Monster handles are still named Inside the Monster for right now. So at ITM Pod on Twitter, at Inside the Monster Pod on Instagram, and we're on TikTok. I think it's Inside the Monster Podcast. But those names will be changing. So if you suddenly, look at your Twitter and you're following the Fenway forecast and you're like, I didn't know I followed this page, that it's probably Inside the Monster.
Perfect. Yeah, everybody go and check that out. Everybody go and support Joey. And I'm not gonna lie, I did put an A after the C in my notes, but we're just gonna forget about that. I'll
You're
make
not
sure
the
it's
first,
right.
dude. You're not the last.
I'll make sure it's right when I post it. But greatly appreciate you coming on, Joey, and definitely continue killing it, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I hope that you did enjoy my conversation with former co-host of Inside the Monster, Joey Copponi, and enjoyed hearing about his journey and his favorite moments from covering the Red Sox over this past season. But we're going to be continuing to bring you interviews just like this one, not only with Red Sox influencers, also reporters, and also players as well. We have a lot of great guests planned out throughout this offseason. So if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. You can also follow myself over there. It's at Jake Iggy. And also Lauren. It's La, 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But we greatly appreciate everybody making Locked On Red Sox their first listen of every single day as well. Now, you can make your second listen, Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective, passion, and humor to cover the Major League Baseball and to keep you updated about everything that is happening surrounding the league. So make sure to follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. But can't wait to bring you another great week filled of guests and Red Sox content. But we hope that everybody has a great weekend, and we'll end it how we always end it. Let's go Sox. Peace.